Yeah, you could do quadrinomials times quadrinomials.
What about pentanomials?
You could do pentanomials times pentanomials. Well, okay, so what do you think? Kate, let's address Kate's question. Kate.
Is it 5?
Yeah, penta means 5. So you would multiply things with 5 terms times things with 5 terms. So we've been doing binomials times binomials, and that works with FOIL just fine. And that's the bulk of what I'm going to ask you to do, is a binomial times a binomial, and you're going to use FOIL for that, all right? First, outside, inside, last. And you guys have demonstrated to me through the last couple assignments that you're able to do that just fine. However, there are going to be times when you need to multiply more than just a binomial times a binomial. You might have to do a binomial, things with 2 terms, times a trinomial, things with 3 terms, or a trinomial times a trinomial, or a trinomial times a quadrinomial, 3 times 4.
What's the difference between a binomial and a trinomial?
So bi means 2, tri means 3. A binomial has 2 terms, and a trinomial has 3 terms.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to show you a method to use to do that. FOIL, first, outside, inside, last, only works if it's a binomial times a binomial. All right? So we're going to use each by each. I'm going to give you an example of where you might use that. So let's say we have 2r plus 5 in one set of parentheses. And I'm going to multiply this by, in another set of parentheses, let's do 2r squared plus 5r plus 6. So this first one here, this is a binomial. Bi meaning 2 because it has 2 terms. This second one is a trinomial, tri meaning 3 because it has 1, 2, 3 terms. Now, if you just did first, outside, inside, last, I'm going to show you what would happen. And I want you guys to pay attention, and don't shout it out, but if you see the problem with doing first, outside, inside, last, I want you to raise your hand or something just to show me if you see what the problem is. So if I did first times first, I'd multiply these 2. If I did outside times outside, I'd multiply these 2. Inside times inside, I'd multiply these 2. And last times last, I'd multiply these 2. So, okay, raise your hand if you see the problem. Raise your hand if you see the problem. She didn't ruin it. Just settle down, dude. Don't be so dramatic, Michael. Okay, so look. Okay, so again, don't shout it. Just raise your hand. So first times first, outside times outside, inside times inside, last times last. Do you see a problem with what I just did? Okay, Nathan, what's the problem? What? Right. So if you're using FOIL, this middle term here never gets to be multiplied or represented in the final product.
And all numbers are created equally.
Right. And all the numbers need to be represented equally in the final product. So we have to use something called each by each. And so I'm going to show you how to do each by each today. I'm going to show you 2 different ways to do it. If you like using the first way, you don't have to use the second way. The second way is just another way of setting it up that might help you arrange it. It takes a little more space on your paper, but it might help you understand how to do it better. So, setting this up, I'm going to do each thing in the first by each thing in the second. That's what each by each means. So I'm going to multiply each thing in the first by each thing in the second. So that's what each by each means. And this works no matter how many terms we have in either of the things that we're multiplying. So I'm going to take each thing in the first and multiply it by each thing in the second. So I'm going to start with 2r. I'm going to multiply this by each thing in the second. So I'm going to do 2r times 2r squared. So 2r times 2r squared is going to become 2 times 2 is 4. R cubed. Good, Elijah. So I did 2r times 2r squared, and now I have to do it times the next thing in the second, times 5r. So that's going to be 2 times 5 is 10, and then r times r makes r squared. And now I have to do it, so I did the first, the second, now I have to do it times the third. So this is going to be plus 12, and then the r just comes along. So that's this times the first times the second times the third. Now I have to switch gears and do the same thing for the 5. So now I have to do the 5 times 2r squared. So 5 times 2 would be 10, and then the r squared just comes along for a ride. And now I'm going to do 5 times the next one in the second thing. So 5 times 5 is 25, and the r just comes along. And now I'm going to do the 5 times the last thing in the second thing, which should be 30, and there's no r on that. Now I have a lot of terms here, but now I can go through and check to see if I have any like terms, and it just so happens that I do. So I don't have any r cubes, and I don't have any plain numbers, so these two on the edges are going to stay lonely. But I have an r squared to match with this r squared, and I have a plain r to match with this plain r. So these can combine, and these can combine. Do you guys see that? So the plus 10r squared and plus 10r squared are going to combine to make how many r squareds?
20.
So plus 20r squared and plus 12r and plus 25r. Right, plus 37r. And then I'm going to drop down the plus 30 and the 4r cubed.
So it's just about the same thing, with a few extra numbers.
Right, except you can't use FOIL, because if you use FOIL, you'll neglect this middle term. Okay? You need to be thinking to yourself, each thing in the first times each thing in the second. Each by each. Okay? Kinda, sorta?
Sort of, kind of.
Now, there's another way that you can set this up, and I'm going to show you that right now. Now, if you don't like doing it this way, it takes a little more space, so you need to use a piece of scratch paper, because I don't really give you enough room to do this on your assignment. But there's the chance that this might make more sense to you. And if it does, great. If this does not make more sense to you, you don't need to use it. This is called the box method.
Do I still take notes on it?
Yes, you do still have to take notes on it. This is called the box method. So I'm going to take this problem and I'm going to turn it into a rectangle. So on one side, I'm going to write 2r plus 5 as two separate terms that are going to represent the width of this box. So it's going to be 2r, and then it's going to be plus 5. And they're going to represent the width of this box. Across the top, I'm going to rewrite this second trinomial, and I'm going to write that as something that's going to represent, oh, sorry Elijah, I can get that. It's going to be something that's going to represent the length of this box. So I'm going to do 2r squared plus 5r plus 6. Does that help if I turn the light on at all? Is that better? Okay. Now, I'm going to break this up into little boxes. And I'm going to find the area of each of these little boxes. And you find the area of each of the little boxes by multiplying length times width. Okay? You don't have to like it, but I'm still going to show it to you because there's a chance that somebody might understand this more than the other way I showed you. All right. So 2r times 2r squared means the area of this box in here would be what? So 2 times 2 would be 4, and then r times r squared would be, so this box is 4r cubed. This box here would be 2r times 5r, which would be 2 times 5 is 10, and r times r is r squared. 2 times 6 is 12, and the r just comes along. This box down here would be 5 times 2, which is 10, and the r squared comes along. Now there's a reason that you might want to do it this way, and I'll show it to you in just a second, so please bear with me. Don't just dismiss it out of hand. Now this box down here has 5 as its width and 5r as its length. So 5 times 5 is 25. The r comes along. And then this last box down here is 5 times 6, which is 30. All right, now the reason you might want to do it this way is if I draw these diagonal lines in, I can write my answer here a little faster. I can go to, like, just going this way, is there anything that's on this same diagonal with 4r cubed? No. So I can just jump right now to saying 4r cubed. On this diagonal, I've got 10r squared and 10r squared. So 10r squared plus 10r squared makes, so plus 20r squared. On this diagonal, I have 25r and 12r. If I combine those, what do they become? Plus 37r. Is there anything on this diagonal with the 30? So plus 30. Okay? If you don't like this method of doing it, or if this doesn't make sense to you, you do not have to do it this way. However, there are quite a few students who seem to think that this is an easier way to do it, or this makes more sense to them. Okay? So just be aware that this is another way of doing it. It takes up a little more space, so you might need to be using a piece of scratch paper while you're working. So let's try one of these on your own. Let's try an example directly from your assignment. So let's do, no, Super doesn't. So if you want to do it the first way I showed you or the second way I showed you, Super doesn't matter. Let's do, in one set of parentheses, 4r minus 5 times, in another set of parentheses, 2r squared plus r minus 4. So, each by each, everything in the first times everything in the second. If you don't understand what you're doing, or if you need help, please let me know.
Oh, Mr. Bucky. Yeah, right, you're right. You should have been. What? All right.
All right, so how can I help you? Oh, right. So who? So when it comes up, just choose 640 by 480. And then you just make sure it works for you. By 480. No. So you might need to refresh it every once in a while because if they make changes, you need to refresh just to make sure that you have the refresh button on any pages just right there.
Thank you, sir.
Yep. All right. So let's take a look at the assignment here. We'll go through the first few together. Oh, that's right.
Yep.
Why did you guys take it in one day? Like, so many of you are here with time to spare.
I got here at 7:56.
I hear it's 8:02.
Well, if they got here at 7:56, that must have been when I got here too.
Oh, so you'd rather just have the extra time?
Yeah, I mean, you still some of us need to study, so that extra time gives us time to study.
I did that, take it early just to get out of the house.
I come here before most of
It's weird how that works because I want to say last year, every 8th grade I had, not every, the majority of 8th graders I had last year would take it in the morning, and then the year before, the majority did not take it in the morning. So it changes from year to year whether or not.
So it's kind of pattern.
That's funny.
I just think it's interesting. All right, so let's take a look at a couple of these together here. So, Zach,
Yep.
we're going to go through part of number 1 together here. So we're going to do each by each.
So you
We're gonna-
times 2v by everything in
Sure.
the second parentheses.
So what do we get?
12v cubed
Mm-hmm.
plus 10v squared plus 6v.
Perfect. Elijah, what happens if we multiply negative 2 times everything in the second place?
Negative 12b squared
And then,
minus 10b
and then,
minus 6.
perfect. So now we're going to combine some like terms here. So there's no like terms for 12b cubed, so I'm just going to drop it down right now. However, 10b squared and minus 12b squared, if I combine those, Andrea, what do they combine to?
2b squared
Plus or minus?
plus
The other one.
plus 2b squared.
And then be minus 2b squared. Because there's more minuses than there are positives. Right?
Yeah.
And then plus 6b and minus 10b, what do they combine to? Andrea?
Negative 4b.
So negative 4b. And then the minus 6 just right now. Absorb? Michael, tell me how to start setting up number 2. So what do I get? Okay. And then Garrett, tell me what to do for the next part. Great. So what do I get from that?
What did he do?
Okay. So what next, Garrett?
5 times
7.
7.
Great.
That's 36.
No.
Oh, yeah, no, 35. I'm thinking 8.
I know. And then last one.
And 5 times 3 is 15.
Cool. And then if I need to combine these two, what in that problem can combine and what cannot? And what do they mean? Great. And what else can combine to make? And then I'll just drop down the plus 15 and 40 and cool. Okay, all right, Tess, how do I start out number 2? Great. Awesome. And then for the next part of your time, what would I do?
Multiply negative 7 a second, so negative 7 a per second. Plus 14k minus 21.
Perfect. And then what like terms can I combine?
16 and 30 and 7.
What do they make?
Negative 23
And what else?
and 24 and plus 14 plus 38.
Great. I'll drop down the minus 21 and the 8 is cool. Nathan, how do I start out problem number 4?
Multiply the 2n to the 5n to 2, 3n in history.
What's 2 times 5?
10.
So it should be 10 n to the third, right? And then what next?
6 n squared.
Great. And then what next?
6n.
Awesome. And then for the next part here, Emily, what do I get?
1 by 5n to the second. 5n,
Great.
by 3n.
And finally, cool. Katie, what can you combine to make what? And then what else? To make. And then perfect. Good job. All right. y'all can get the rest of this right. We're gonna have a quiz tomorrow. So you'll have some time to work on this, but we might have like a game or something to play too, in addition to the quiz. So we'll see. But you will have some time in class to work on this. So this is gonna be due, let's say Friday. But you won't have all of class tomorrow to work on it after the quiz. Yeah.
I need help.
So you choose to keep your number parts that go in both.
Can you go
So,
that way?
yeah, you can work your home. So 4 and 10, what's the number parts that go in both? So then you're going to take the 2 out of both of them. And then is there a variable? Okay, so then you're going to put a 2 on the outside of the set of parentheses. So put that 2 and over to correct. And then 4 divided by 2. No, 4 divided by 2 is. Yep.
Turn the lights on.
Yeah, you can turn the lights on. And then you're not taking the R away, so the R stays with it.
Okay, all of these, the that one is not even.
And then minus. And then 2 divided by 2 is close parentheses. So for the next one, it's very hard to do. So the number part, we'll put in about 25 and 5. Now, so this is variable parts. They both have a key. So there's Q on the outside. So they both have, they both have,
Like outnumbered.
so then you can't take out the number. Open your parentheses. 25 divided by 5. Okay. And you took the key out. So there's no more time for you to open the parentheses. Now you're going to start with a minus sign. 5 divided by 5 is, and again, you took the key out.